how you can triple your practice asset valuation when you're ready to sell. Now, the stuff I'm going to be covering today is not my normal content, but I think it is something that a lot of practice owners need to be thinking about now rather than waiting until they're ready to actually retire and then be worried and concerned about selling their practice. Now, why do I think now is the time to do it? Well, let me tell you. But first, if we haven't had the chance to meet yet, I'm Jamie Gruhl, and after helping over 500 tax and accounting practices implement automation with TaxDome, I can confidently say that automation is the only way to increase your profit and time freedom in your practice. So what I wanted to share today is why this type of automation is so powerful for the practice owner who someday wants to sell their practice. And there's three things that I'm going to cover today, but I want you to really think about if you were a young whippersnapper coming up into the industry who has these visions of purchasing a practice, would you want to step into a practice that has not really had any overhaul in the operations and creating efficient operation? Now, when I say that, I'm talking about the person who maybe has been a partner at one of the big four. Maybe they are coming out of corporate environment and they're like, hey, I'm all in on this, doing it for myself and building my own business. And they see the value in buying an already established firm. And a lot of practices will say, well, yeah, there's already value. They've got the client list. Well, what if you could make that client list even more valuable by automating your operations and creating efficiency in your operations so that somebody coming in and wanting to purchase a firm sees you as the best option for them, sees your practice as the one that is so prepared for a transition and having a succession plan in place that it's a no-brainer for somebody to pay more for your asset. Now, I was curious about this because there's a whole industry of selling practices and firms across the country. There's lots of brokers and lots of dealers out there, but I did the good old ChatGPT and let it go and do the searches for me. And what I found is that there's actually the numbers that come back is if you have a paper practice, 100% paper, you could have the best clients in the world, your valuation would come in anywhere from 0.5 to 1.5 times your annual revenue. And there's a number of different ways that they can value a practice, but that 0.5 to 1.5 times your revenue is a pretty standard number. Now, the interesting thing that I found is that if you were to actually have an automated practice, one where you are utilizing a virtual tool, cloud-based tool, where your clients have been converted over from the paper model of delivering documents and you having to send out packets and all of the very manual, inefficient ways that the firm or this industry used to work, and you were to automate it and streamline your practice, you would actually draw 1.5 to 3 times your annual revenue. Now, of course, these numbers are all very dependent on location and the breakdown of your services and all the things. But just as like kind of a broad net, I thought that was fascinating because just by automating your practice now and giving you the next 5, 10, 15 years of enjoying your practice and not having the manual work, you are able to actually increase the value of your asset as time goes on so that you can then sell it for more money. Now, who doesn't want to improve the value of their asset? I don't want that for you when it comes to your practice, because implementing automation and moving from the old school way of operating a firm into the automated way is a process. And it's one that I want for you to look at as a process that can improve the living environment and the working environment for you today and for the many years until you're ready to retire. So I want to talk today about why investors would look at a firm with automation as being 3 times more valuable than the paper firm, to give you an idea of what they're looking for. And you're probably going to hear it and be like, yeah, that makes sense. So put yourself in the shoes of somebody buying a practice, somebody young, somebody who's looking at investing their money into an asset that will then serve them for the long term. And think about that investment and look at how they would be looking at your firm. And maybe that's even an exercise you do after this video is, if I was to be an outside person looking in at buying my firm, would they see it as the 3-time value of a paper practice? Or is there some work that we could do to make it more valuable? So the first thing is scalability. as I mentioned, somebody who's investing into a firm, taking out a loan, and is going to take on your team and is looking to better their own business, and they are probably see opportunities for scaling. They want to know that there's an opportunity for growth, increased revenue, increased profit, increased efficiencies in the firm, and they will pay based on how much work they have to do to be able to scale that firm. So there's a lot of people that will go and buy, a fixer upper, and they will invest their time and energy to doing the flip and making it automated, and they will then reap the benefits of that. But you could make that change now. So when you're looking at scalability, I want for you to be thinking about how your interested parties would want to take that on. Now, why is this important for them? Because if their clients have already experienced an online experience, the staff have already experienced using a cloud-based tool or a virtual environment, then that is less work for them to actually have to go and implement that. And the other thing that this does is it also reduces the risk of losing clients in a transition, because there's a lot of people that buy practice lists and they go and they then try and force a major change of the automation onto a new client list, and the clients will leave in some cases. Not only do they have the change of not having their favorite CPA doing their books, but they also risk the change of how the practice is being run by implementing software and having the cloud-based model. And so this is something that a lot of investors or people that are looking to invest their dollars into a practice are going to look at. So it's something for you to be thinking about. The other thing that this does is that the automation allows for more flexibility in hiring surge times. So right now, we all know that hiring is a challenge. And if you have a paper-based brick and mortar office where everybody comes to work and there's files that are being managed and there's people dropping things off, that does not really allow for a lot of flexibility when it comes to busy seasons. You can only hire locally. You can only, grow so much. And when you have manual systems, bringing in new staff means extra efforts. And so there's a lot of reasons that having automated workflows and processes can actually allow for greater flexibility with scaling for people that are looking to scale their firms. The second thing is efficiency. So the automated practice has already standardized their workflows. Now, if you have the old school paper practice right now, it is very likely that you've been working on standardizing things to make them as efficient as possible. But what you have probably found is that there is still a lot of people kind of doing their own thing. And that's because, you have not looked at the standardization from the practice level. Old habits, when it comes to, I still have this paper form in front of me. Now, when you move to a new tool and you're having to retrain your team on how to work, meaning how to manage their work, it's not the actual change of the work itself, but it's looking at that standardization. And a lot of people say, well, all my clients are different. And my answer to that is always, well, your client attributes are different, meaning that you are preparing returns for an individual. You are preparing returns for a married filing jointly. You are preparing returns for the small business that is an S Corp or a C Corp. But when you look at the actual process that you're going through, those things and how you prepare that return, they get done the same way every time. And you're maybe doing that with your paper practice. And if you have kind of piecemealed some systems together, you're likely doing that there too, because everybody has to get an engagement letter. Everyone has to sign the engagement letter. Everyone has to get a deposit invoice. There are more generic buckets of things that are happening in those steps. And that is what standardization looks at. It looks at how can I make sure that every time we're moving a client through our process, it is done in the exact same way, because that ensures nobody gets a poor experience. Everybody gets communicated the same. And every team member knows that if a client is at the point in the process where we are preparing the return, we have all the documents. So that is something important to think about. The other thing that standardization will do is it will ensure that your output is effective, and it will ensure that you are producing well-delivered services. As I mentioned, because of that standardization and knowing that every client is going through the exact same steps, there's no weird oddball stuff. So that removing those one-off situations, because everything is standardized and every client goes through the same process, really does result in happy long-term clients. The next one is no location dependency. When you are looking at selling your practice, if you are somebody that is located in a small town or a rural area, then it is very likely that you're going to have a harder time selling your practice to a local person. That doesn't allow for is there is a long runway that has to happen with that. There has to be succession planning. There has to be finding that individual who will come in and you can groom into owning and stepping into the ownership of your practice. And with this new generation, we don't have as many opportunities for that because there is just not the influx of young CPAs, young EAs, young accountants that we once had in the industry. And so you need to be thinking about the opportunity to actually remove the location dependency from your practice. So what does that mean? Well, by removing location dependency and having a cloud-based tool, somebody from, say, Florida, who is looking at scaling in the Southeast region could come into your small practice in Georgia that is very successful and has built a really strong client base and is providing really excellent services. And there's a lot of value alignment there. They could actually purchase your firm because they can manage remotely the clients and the firm from a further location, like an outside location. And that allows for your firm to carry on its legacy and continue servicing your clients. But this is how regionalized firms come up. This is how you start seeing, the mergers and acquisitions that happen. That is how it happens because the location dependency is not there. If you had somebody in Florida who was looking at buying your practice and you were 100% paper, they're going to have to spend a lot of time in your actual practice to make the transition. And that is not really something for everyone, right? Like it just narrows your pool of interested buyers to a very small number because of the location requirement. Now, the other thing that this does is by having that no location dependency, it opens up the pool of hireability for somebody who's looking at purchasing your firm. So we all know, as I mentioned earlier, that hiring is not simple right now. It is not easy to go out in your local community and bring on reliable, educated, experienced staff. So you either have to, pay big bonuses, pay people to come in and move to where you are if you have your paper-based firm, or you just cross your fingers that some kid is going to get out of college and say, hey, I want to be a CPA, and they're just going to knock on your door. So what I think is really important is when you're thinking about making that transition to a cloud-based tool and a more virtual experience, it allows for remote hiring because you're able to manage staff, whether they're in the office or they're remote. The other thing that it does is for you is in the long term, if you are somebody who is looking at continuing to run your business until actual retirement, then you will actually be able to have more flexibility in your life. You're no longer tied to the paper documents that are in the office. So if your family wants to go and have a 2-week summer trip to the lake and you're like, well, I can, but I have to get a few big things done, you can do that remotely now. You don't have to lug papers with you. You don't have to go into the office to get things done. You can actually just with your laptop now travel and get work done. So there is a lot of benefit to you personally that having that remote ability to work will bring you in the years before you actually sell. So those are the 3 things: scalability, efficiency, and non-location dependence that I think are really important topics that I want for you to be thinking about if you are somebody who is, heading into looking out at their future and wanting to sell their practice someday. I mean, for the investment of time and energy that can bring you 5 or 10 years of enjoyable work for these remainder of your years, possibly even increasing your revenue during those years because of increased client efficient or capacity and making your team more efficient and yourself more efficient when it comes to service delivery, you could actually increase your profit year to year going into those final years of looking towards retirement. And then the other thing that this does is it also gives you the opportunity to enjoy that, but make your asset more valuable when it comes time to retire. So I hope that you will consider this. And if you're like, oh, but I don't even know how to implement this, don't worry. This is what we do in Workflows for Tax Pros. So if you're like, I want to have more scalability, I want to have more efficiency, I want to be more virtual this next year, then Workflows for Tax Pros is our program. It's a 12-month program where we teach you how to transition from the paper environment or or maybe a piecemealed, very inefficient tech stack to a more streamlined, all-in-one working environment using TaxDome. We guide you step by step from how to transition your client, how to transition your team, and most importantly, how to set TaxDome up so that it works for you, so that it's leveraging all of the features of TaxDome and you don't have to figure it out on your own. So let us be your guides and help you build a beautiful practice that gives you the lifestyle that you want, as well as increasing your profit in 2024. So if you're interested, we're going to be going through a big launch in these coming weeks, and I'm excited to share more with you about why TaxDome is so powerful. But check us out. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Natalie Block, who's here in the Facebook group. We're always available to answer questions for you about workflows for tax pros and what our services are. And we want to see you succeed in building that asset that will serve you for the long haul. Flo, just let me know that this was something that resonated with you. I would love to hear it. Feedback always helps me make sure that I am giving you the best trainings possible.